The advice that I was given when I was a kid came from lots of different sources. My father, first of all, from Stand Thirsted Pro. And the thing that keeps me going is the competition. I love to compete. And I love putting my skills on the line when the chips are down, when I have a chance to win a golf tournament.
I am James, and this is Golf Relived. Truth revealed. At 82 years old, Tom Watson has finally opened up about the cheating allegations that haunted him and shattered one of golf's most iconic friendships. This is not a rumor. This is not gossip dug up by strangers. This is the man himself, in the twilight of his life, choosing honesty over silence. And what he says changes everything you thought you knew about that infamous day in the Arizona desert. And if this truth-revealed story hits you, tap the hype button and hype this video so more golf fans can see it. Now let's rewind, because before we get to Watson speaking in May 2026, we need to understand exactly what happened on that desert course in November 1983. The moment one leaf behind a golf ball nearly destroyed 40 years of friendship, reputation, and respect. Golf is unlike any other sport on earth. There is no referee standing over your shoulder. There is no video judge watching every move from a booth above the stadium. In golf, the players police themselves. They call penalties on themselves. They report their own mistakes, even when no one else is watching. That is the honor system. It has survived for centuries because the men and women who play this game were expected to hold it sacred above everything else. It is a gentleman's agreement made between a competitor and his own conscience. And for most of golf's history, that agreement held. But here is the thing about honor systems. They work beautifully when the stakes are low. When a man is playing for a modest check and a handshake, the rules feel easy to follow. When millions of dollars sit on a single swing, the pressure they create on the human mind is something else entirely. The soul does not change, but the test it faces becomes much harder. In 1983, a brand new televised event called the Skins Game arrived on American screens. It was designed by television producers as a fun, flashy, money-filled exhibition. 4 of the greatest golfers alive were brought together to compete. Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer, Gary Player, and Tom Watson. Together, these 4 men held 41 major championships at the time they teed it up. The total prize on offer was $360,000. To understand how staggering that number was, consider this. Seve Ballesteros had won the Masters tournament that same year and took home just $90,000 for 4 days of grueling major championship golf. The Skins Game format made the money feel even bigger. Each hole had a cash value attached to it. If the hole was tied, the money carried over to the next hole. So by the time players reached certain holes, the skin on offer had ballooned into something almost unthinkable. One chip shot, one putt, one moment of greatness, and a player could pocket more money than most people earned in years. The television audience loved it. Ratings soared past even the US Open. The sport had found a formula the public could not resist. Legends, pressure, and direct cash payouts. But that formula had a hidden cost. When you put that kind of money on a single shot, the way a competitor sees everything around him changes. The mind sharpens in uncomfortable ways. Every blade of grass matters. Every small advantage feels enormous. And the line between doing what is right and doing what is necessary starts to blur. Watson was not the kind of man who blurred that line. He was raised in Kansas City by his father, Ray Watson, a man who believed golf was first and foremost about personal honor. His dad was a competitive club champion who drilled into young Tom the idea that the rules were not optional. They were a contract. This foundation was hardened even further when Watson came under the guidance of the legendary Byron Nelson. After a painful collapse at the 1974 US Open at Winged Foot, Nelson approached Watson in the locker room and offered to mentor him. Under Nelson's eye, Watson did not just become a better ball striker. He became a deeper believer in the etiquette and dignity of the game. Watson once self-penalized at Sonoma Golf Club when his ball moved barely a quarter of an inch as he placed his club behind it. His opponent was on the far side of the fairway and had no idea it happened. Watson called it on himself immediately. That is the kind of man he was. Rules were sacred. Not calling a penalty felt like lying. This was not just professionalism. It was a personal code, built into him by family and by mentors, and reinforced by every competitive round he ever played. 5 Open championships. The legendary duel in the sun with Jack Nicklaus at Turnberry in 1977. A career built on excellence and on character in equal measure. Gary Player was built differently. Born in post-war South Africa, Player had none of the comfortable upbringing that shaped Watson. He was a small man in a sport that rewarded size and strength, so he compensated with relentless fitness, iron discipline, and a fighter's instinct for survival. He became the first truly global ambassador of the sport, traveling the world for decades, designing hundreds of courses, and writing dozens of books. He was nicknamed the Black Knight, and he earned it. Player believed in grinding for every single edge the rules allowed. He was not looking to break the rules, but he was always going to push right up to the boundary line. Two different philosophies, two different men, one desert course, one very large pile of money. The explosion happened on the 16th hole. It was a par 3, measuring 240 yards. Brutal. The kind of hole where one bad swing sends you home empty. The carryover had pushed the skin on that hole to $120,000. Palmer's tee shot had been swallowed by desert flora, ending his chance. Nicklaus missed a long par putt, taking himself out of contention. Watson made his par and stood in a prime position to win the entire skin. Gary Player was the only man who could stop him. Player's tee shot had missed the green and left him in a tough spot, his ball sitting in a difficult lie. As Player crouched down to prepare his chip shot, Watson was watching from about 30 feet away. Here is the rule that matters. In golf, players are allowed to remove what are called loose impediments from around their ball. A dead leaf sitting on the ground, a twig that snapped off a branch, anything detached and free moving. That is fine. You can pick it up and toss it aside. But if something is rooted, still connected to a plant, still growing out of the earth, you cannot touch it. Moving a rooted object improves your lie. That is against the rules. It is a penalty. Watson watched Player reach down and remove a leaf from directly behind his ball. In Watson's eyes, that leaf was not loose. It was attached, connected to a desert weed or branch beneath it. It was rooted. Watson said nothing in that moment. He did not call for a rules official. He did not walk over to Player and raise the concern. He stood, he watched. Player chipped the ball close to the pin, tapped in for his par, and halved the hole. The carryover survived. Then came the 17th hole. Player stepped up and struck a brilliant birdie. That one shot won him the entire accumulated skin, $150,000 in a single moment. Player walked off the 17th green as the day's dominant winner. Watson walked off carrying something heavy inside him. The walk from the 18th green toward the press area took the players down a quiet, unpaved road. It was the kind of quiet that follows a storm before anyone realizes what just happened. And it was on that dirt road that Watson finally broke his silence, directly confronting Gary Player. New York Times columnist Dave Anderson was close enough to hear every word. Watson pointed his finger and told Player, "I'm accusing you, Gary. You can't do that. I'm tired of this. I wasn't watching you, but I saw it." Player was stunned, shaken. He replied immediately, "I was within the rules." Rules official Joe Day and Jack Nicklaus were both present on that road as the exchange unfolded. But being witnessed by officials did not fix what had already broken. The confrontation was raw, personal, and devastating. The next day, Dave Anderson published his column. He titled it, "The Golf Hole Nobody Will Forget." And with that headline, a private sporting dispute became an international scandal. Watson issued a public statement reaffirming his belief in the rules, saying that if rules were overlooked, the game would become something far less than it is. But alongside that firm stance, Watson added a line that would sit on his conscience for the next 4 decades. "My greatest regret, though, is that this private matter became a public incident." Player felt the public accusation like a punch. He believed Watson had broken a fundamental point of golf etiquette by not raising the concern on the 16th green itself. The right thing, Player argued, was to speak up in the moment, while a rules official could examine the lie and make a call before the shot was played. By staying silent on the green and then going public after the money was decided, Watson had denied Player any chance to defend himself in real time. In later writings, Player expressed that Watson's actions that day would follow him for the rest of his life. Both men believed their honor had been attacked, and that is what made the wound so deep. It was not just about a leaf. It was about integrity and whose version of it was right. The war did not stay confined to the desert. Player fought back through the media and in print, turning the spotlight onto Watson's own equipment history. He pointed out that Watson had won major championships using clubs that were later found to be non-conforming. This referred to a 1977 PGA championship investigation at Pebble Beach, where inspectors found that several top players' irons, manufactured by a company called Ram, had grooves that were slightly too wide. The manufacturing error was tiny, measured in fractions of a millimeter, but it fell outside the legal limit. Watson was among the affected players, along with Player himself, and others, including Raymond Floyd, Hale Irwin, and Tom Weiskopf. Watson was cleared of any intentional wrongdoing. Officials confirmed the players had no idea about the manufacturing flaw. Watson scrambled at Pebble Beach, borrowing a 25-year-old set of silver Scott irons from fellow competitor Roger Maltby and a sand wedge from Leonard Thompson, just to keep playing, eventually finishing tied for 6th. There was also a separate equipment issue involving a ball Watson used that the USGA later found to be fractionally undersized. Again, Watson was cleared. No intentional cheating, his titles stood. But Player had chosen to weaponize these technical issues in the press. And that move told you everything about how deeply the 1983 accusation had wounded him. When trust collapses between two men, they start looking everywhere for ammunition. Old gear measurements, manufacturing tolerances, whispers from tournaments years gone by. There were whispers about Player, too. At the 1974 Open Championship at Royal Lytham, rumors had circulated for years that Player's caddy, Alfred Dyer, may have dropped a fresh ball in the rough during a desperate search on the 17th hole. Player finished that tournament as the only man under par, winning by 4 shots. No official infraction was ever found. The rumors were never validated, but they lingered, and they may have been part of what made Watson speak so forcefully in 1983, a background of unease that had been building long before the skins game. This is the part that hurts most when you step back and look at it honestly. 2 men of genuine greatness. 2 men who gave their lives to golf, and a single moment on a single hole that sent decades of goodwill into the ground. The accusation, whether right or wrong, is the single worst thing one golfer can say to another. It is not just saying you played a bad shot or made a poor decision. It is saying your integrity cannot be trusted. In a sport built entirely on self-policing honor, that accusation strikes at the very foundation of who a competitor is. It cuts deeper than any scorecard. It reaches past performance and touches identity itself. Player felt that to his core. Watson knew it too, and yet, Watson could not unsee what he believed he saw. He could not unfeel what that moment felt like, watching $150,000 change hands one hole after what he believed was an illegal advantage. That is the human tragedy sitting at the center of this story. 2 men, both committed to the sport they loved, colliding at the exact point where honor and money crossed paths. Now, it is May 2026. Tom Watson is 82 years old. The skins game has long since become a relic of television history. The raw anger has softened the way fire eventually turns to warmth, and Watson has chosen to speak openly, maturely, and with the kind of grace that only comes from a lifetime of carrying something heavy. His reflections in 2026 are not a retraction. He still stands by what he believed he saw. He is not walking any of it back. But the way he frames it now is different, more generous, and more aware of the bigger picture. He has said that his primary regret was never the accusation itself. It was the fact that a private matter of sporting integrity was allowed to become a public circus. He wishes it had stayed on that dirt road. He wishes it had never reached the newspaper columns and the television cameras. Watson has spoken about the modern sports landscape in a way that adds real depth to the story. He sees the financial machinery of today's game as a pressure on the individual honor system that golf was built on. When cynical incentives grow large enough, the self-policing code that held the sport together for centuries comes under a kind of strain that is genuinely hard to resist. He is not excusing anyone. He is naming the force that turned a golf exhibition into a 40-year wound. And in naming it honestly, Watson does something remarkable. He transforms a painful memory into a lesson, not a warning label, not a cautionary tale that ends in bitterness. A lesson about what golf is actually built on, and why that foundation still matters even when the money grows enormous and the cameras never stop rolling. The truth is this: golf can only survive as a self-policing sport if its players believe in something larger than the prize. Watson believed in that. Player believed in it. They disagreed on what it looked like in a single moment on a single hole, but neither man ever stopped caring about the honor of the game itself. That is the thread that ties this whole story together. Beneath the anger, beneath the accusations and the counter-accusations, beneath the equipment controversies and the newspaper headlines, both men were fighting for the same thing. What Watson's voice in 2026 gives us is something we rarely get from legends at this level: honest reflection without self-protection. He is not spinning the story. He is not doing a publicity tour. He is an 82-year-old man who wants to set the record straight, not to win an argument, but to close a wound that has been open for 4 decades. That kind of courage is its own form of honor. Golf's greatest gift to sport is its belief that a person can be trusted to tell the truth, even when no one is watching, and no one will ever know. Tom Watson has spent a lifetime proving that. And even now, at 82, speaking about the hardest moment of his professional life, he is doing exactly the same thing. The leaf behind the ball, the $120,000 skin, the dirt road confrontation, the newspaper headline, 4 decades of cold silence. And then, finally, a voice speaking clearly into the open air. A voice that does not beg for forgiveness, but does not harden into bitterness either. A voice choosing honesty over comfort, reflection over resentment, and the dignity of the game over the protection of pride. That is the sound of a champion in the truest sense. This is the legacy of golf's greatest era. Not the trophies, not the television ratings, not even the money or the fame. It is the belief that integrity outlasts everything else, and that the truest champions are the ones brave enough to carry that belief all the way to the end. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe to Golf Relived so you never miss a story from the sport we all love. Drop a comment below. Do you think Watson was right to speak up, or should he have let it go years ago? We read every single one.